think about this. Zigs are very popular these days, and there are times of the year when it's virtually impossible to get a bite on the bottom. I do that. I use zigs, quite regular. I find it a little bit frustrating using the adjustable zigs sometimes, because they are a bit messy and fiddly. So, you've got no alternative, or have you, when you're over deep water, or even any kind of water. One of the problems you've got when you're zig fishing is a lot of the fly hatches, or a lot of the stuff that the carp are feeding on, is moving on undertow. So there's a kind of a current that's moving stuff. Like when you mixer fishing, you see your mixers moving across the top, and your float will go with it. And quite often you get a take when it's moving the same speed as the free offerings. But if you anchor it, they seem to know that that's anchored and all your freebies are moving. Not always. When they're really competitive, they'll make mistakes, but when it's really a bit sketchy and you're really trying to get a bite, the fish can be a little bit circumspect and be, really tricky. So what I was doing, I thought, how can I get round this? So I decided to use one of these bolt machines, which you use for surface fishing. And instead of using a surface bait, I use a boilie that's trimmed down like a barrel. Still use a size 8 hook. I've got a curve on and a line align it, and I'm using this time I wanted to fish around 2 feet under the surface, so I'm using the surface controller with a bottom bait. So what you can do is you can cast it out. Everyone thinks you're using a floater on the surface, and if the fish are not quite having it off the top and they're underneath, say a couple of 3 feet, 4 feet, so what? You just cast it out as though it's a floater. It sinks, and when you get a take, they just hit it and just slam into the float, and off you go. And I've even done it at night and used it on the bite alarms, and had just fast normal takes. Occasionally get a bit of slack in the line, but what I try to do is, rather than get on a swim where there's a crosswind, I try and get on the back of the wind. So the wind's coming off my back, and then everything goes smoothly. And you can actually use a small spom over the top of this and spom in slow sinking baits. What I typically do is get one of the Match Anglers pellet pumps, squeeze the air out of the mixers and soak them, and then they're slow sinkers, and then I'll just fish one of those amongst them. And it's surprising, when that's trotting through the swim, it'll suddenly collapse and you'll see a big boil, and off you go. So it's another alternative to having to fish static zigs or to fish on the top. And it works in winter as well, especially when you're on deep places and it's tricky to fish with adjustables. This is the other option to fish from the top, so it's worth a try. Give it some thought, and easy to do. Think on. So there's my tip for the day.